and we'll get started. So we'll be back momentarily. All right, Kate, do you want to go ahead and should we get started?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Thank you for joining us today for the 2019 Rural and Native American Section 4 Request for Letters of Interest Overview. My name is Sarah Torcell, and I'm a Program Director with the Rural and Native American Initiative. I am joined today by Kate Diffenderfer, Senior Grant Specialist with our Solutions Operations Management Department. Just wanted to point out that today's event is being recorded, and we'll be sending a link to the archive to all of today's participants, as well as the recording being posted on the Enterprise website. There will be time at the end of the presentation for questions. We have a fairly large group today, so all participants have been muted upon entry. But to ask questions, you can write in your question using the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen and direct your questions to all panelists. Again, we'll have time at the end for questions. So for today's agenda, I will be doing an overview of Enterprise and the Rural and Native American Initiative and our funding program priorities for 2019. And Kate is going to talk about the Section 4 program and go over important information about the application process. Today's presentation is just a summary of the Rural and Native American request for letters of interest, and applicants are strongly encouraged to download and review the full copy of the LOI and adhere to all the guidelines within. So just a little bit about Enterprise. Enterprise is a national nonprofit affordable housing intermediary, and our mission is to create opportunity for low and moderate income people through affordable housing in diverse, thriving communities. Since 1982, we've invested over $43 billion in communities across the country through public-private partnerships that have resulted in nearly 585,000 healthy, well-designed affordable homes, critical community assets like healthcare clinics and charter schools, and over 500,000 jobs created and millions of lives touched. Our work is focused in 3 areas, and that is capital, policy, and programs that work to bring solutions to some of the most pressing housing and economic problems facing low-income communities. The Rural and Native American Initiative falls under programs and solutions, but we really work across all 3 of these focus areas. Enterprise has been working in rural communities since 1997 and have invested more than $800 million in grants, loans, and equity and developed more than 15,000 affordable homes in rural communities nationwide. There are currently 5 staff members working under the Rural and Native American Initiative. Susan Anderson is the director of the program, and she leads our rural and Native American work and does a lot of work around preservation and Native home ownership. Russ Caney is a director of programs, and his focus is around preservation, permanent supportive housing, as well as advocating for rural programs and policies. I'm a program director, as previously said, and I manage our Section 4 funding program, as well as work on our community and economic development program, preservation, and our health and housing efforts. Vince Gallagher is a program associate, and his primary focus is advancing homeownership in Native communities, and he also does work around disaster planning and resiliency. And Adrienne Norwood is our newest employee and is a Communications and Policy Program Associate, so she's going to be working on communication efforts for our team, as well as advancing policy priorities for rural communities. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Kate Diffenderfer. She's not officially on the Rural and Native American team, but she is the Senior Grant Specialist for the Rural and Native American Initiative, and I'm sure many of you on the line have worked with her if you've ever received a grant from Enterprise. Kate is my partner in all things Section 4. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about the Section 4 program in general and some new changes to the program this year, and then I'll be back to talk about our funding priorities.
Thanks, Sarah. One of the ways that Enterprise helps to build capacity and create opportunity is through an award that we received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Section 4 Capacity Building for Community Development Program, which we're going to call Section 4 from now on. And the purpose of Section 4 is to enhance the technical and administrative capabilities of community development corporations, or CDCs, community housing development organizations, or CHODOs, and there is also a criteria listed that allows us to qualify organizations that function as CDCs, even if they aren't traditionally considered one, and that includes organizations that serve Native American populations with a defined mission, such as tribes, tribally designated housing entities, or tribal housing authorities. And these grant funds are used to build CDC and CHODO capacity to carry out community development and affordable housing activities for the benefit of households with low income, which for the purposes of this program are defined as 80% AMI or below. And just kind of a little bit of a definition for capacity building, the National Council of Nonprofits defines it as whatever is needed to bring a nonprofit to the next level of operational, programmatic, financial, or organizational maturity, so it may more effectively and efficiently advance its mission into the future. Capacity building is not a one-time effort to improve short-term effectiveness, but a continuous improvement strategy toward the creation of a sustainable and effective organization. So to be eligible for this funding opportunity, again, applicants must meet the eligibility requirements that are described in Appendix A of the LOI. There are 2 requirements. The first, again, is the HUD-specific requirements, which limit the grant funding to CDCs and CHODOs or organizations that may function as one, but may not be a traditional CDC. And then the other criteria is that activities that you're proposing as part of your application should directly benefit your organization and build the capacity of your organization. So if you're thinking of submitting an application to build the capacity of other organizations, say through a training or technical assistance, that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate under this grant program, as the capacity building benefit would be given to those receiving the training or assistance. So again, just make sure that the direct capacity building benefit to your organization is clear in your application. The second requirement set by Enterprise is that applicants must have demonstrated staff capacity to successfully manage this federal grant award and perform the proposed activities. Demonstrated staff capacity means that your organization has staff, and they can either be full-time, part-time, or contracted, that are handling your day-to-day organizational duties and have relevant experience to oversee and implement projects and programs. If your organization is relying solely on volunteers or donated staff, we wouldn't consider that as having demonstrated staff capacity. So new this year is a change to the eligibility of membership groups. And this is a fairly large change, but after discussions with our HUD representative, we're no longer allowing membership organizations to apply. Enterprise defines membership organizations as an organization where each member is an entity, not an individual, that has membership rights in accordance with provisions of its articles of incorporation or bylaws. And membership organizations whose primary missions are to engage and strengthen member organizations without also having a primary purpose to carry out community or economic development activities themselves are not eligible to apply. But we understand that not all membership organizations are structured the same. So if you are a membership group and you've reviewed the LOI eligibility criteria and feel that you really are eligible for this opportunity, we'd be happy to review your organizational documents like articles of incorporation and bylaws to make a determination. And you can email rfp@enterprisecommunity.org for assistance, and we'll get back to you right away. Since the clock is ticking, we want to make sure that if you really are eligible, that you have plenty of time to complete your application. Some general information about the LOI. This funding opportunity consists of a two-step application process, including the letters of interest phase and a full proposal phase. And just a reminder that applicants advancing to the full proposal stage must be invited by Enterprise. Applications must be submitted through SlideRoom, which is the online application system we're using. And in Appendix C of the LOI, you can get more information on creating an account in SlideRoom. You can only submit one application to either of the two open Section 4 LOIs. So right now we have the Rural and Native American LOI open and our national LOI. So this means that if you have a project that aligns with the funding priorities and geographies for both of the national LOI and the Rural and Native American LOI, you'll have to choose which funding opportunity is the best fit for your proposed project. You cannot submit applications under both. You'll also be asked to select only one program area, and we understand that proposed projects may touch multiple program areas, which is okay. However, you will still need to choose a single program area that most closely aligns with your proposed project. And just a note that if your application does happen to cross multiple program areas, that doesn't mean that you'll receive a scoring advantage. Something else to be aware of is that Enterprise is one of 3 intermediaries that receive Section 4 funding from HUD. The other 2 are LISC and Habitat for Humanity. And so we ask that if you have any active awards with LISC or Habitat, or if you have any pending applications with them, that you don't request the same funding from us. Or sorry, I should rephrase that. You shouldn't request funding from us for the same costs that you may have requested from LISC or Habitat. You are absolutely allowed to apply under this program, but we just ask that you don't request funding for the same costs. You can find all of our application materials and information on our website. This is open to eligible organizations operating nationwide, and we have a little over $796,000 to award. So the anticipated awards are ranging from $25,000 to $50,000, with the average award expected to be $50,000. So when submitting your ask, we just ask that you make sure it's reasonable and that it aligns with what you're proposing. Something else to be aware of is the anticipated start date of the grant. This is new this year, so any previous applicants or grantees that are on the line, this will be a big change for you this year if you receive another award. If awarded a grant, the period of performance is going to begin on the first of the month following the execution of the grant by both parties. Assuming we get all of the information that we need from organizations that receive an award, we're anticipating that grant start dates will range from November 1st, 2019 through January 2020. Until you get that fully executed agreement, you will not be able to incur any costs prior to that start date. And finally, we have another new requirement that everybody should be aware of. Applications should be submitted by an authorized representative of the organization. We know that a lot of organizations use consultants to help them prepare their applications, which is totally fine. We just ask that any consultants that you may be working with don't submit the application on your behalf. We'd like someone from your organization to submit the application, and we also ask that you do not list any consultants as points of contact. So for your primary and secondary contacts, we're looking for an authorized representative from your organization. It could be staff members, board members, or so on, but we just ask that you don't list any consultant as your contacts. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah to talk about the program areas.
Thanks, Kate. And just a general reminder for those who are just joining, you can at any time during the presentation send your questions into the Q&A box, and we will field those at the end of the presentation. So the role in Native American geography. So funding is really available to eligible applicants operating in rural areas across the nation. You just have to meet the definition of rural as applicable to the Section 4 program, which is really to say you have to be in an area of 50,000 people or less. So we have a map here, and the link is included in the LOI, that you can use to check your eligibility to see if your grant activities take place in a rural area. So maybe your organization is located in an urban area, but the grant activities are going to take place in rural, you would then qualify. But if you have any questions, you can use this. So if you put in your grant activities zip code and the map turns pink, that means you are in an urban area and would not qualify for rural funding. If that's the case, I would recommend looking at the national Section 4 LOI and review those program priorities. So if you're not located in a rural area and not in an enterprise market, the National Initiative Program covers the entire country, and you may be able to apply there. So as I said, this funding opportunity really covers the entire country, but this year we are giving bonus points to organizations who are working in an area of persistent poverty. So those areas have been defined as Central Appalachia, Lower Mississippi Delta, the Southern Black Belt, the Colonias region along the U.S.-Mexico border, Native American lands, and areas where migrant and seasonal farm workers are. And persistent poverty, the definition is counties that have had poverty rates of 20% or greater for at least 30 years. So you probably know if you're in an area of persistent poverty, but we have included a link in the LOI that you can use to check if the county or grant activities you'll be working in are located in one of these areas. So again, this is new, and we are giving bonus points for those applicants who are in these areas. So program areas, the bulk of why we're here today. So this year, the Rural and Native American Initiative has 7 primary program areas we are focusing on, with some sub-programs under a few of these. So we're focused on rental housing preservation, Native home ownership, community and economic development, and a sub-program under that is the Orton Foundation's Heart and Soul program, economic mobility, health and housing, equitable climate resilience, which consists of building and designing sustainable communities, and then resilience planning, disaster recovery and planning, and then finally organizational capacity building. So for those that have applied in previous years, some of these look probably very familiar to you, and some are new program areas we've just added this year, and some are program areas that we have renamed so that are aligned with our priorities. But we'll go over each one and their component, and of course have time at the end for questions. I also strongly encourage you to read through the program areas thoroughly in the LOI, as I am only giving some highlights and examples from each program, but there is more detail in the descriptions in the LOI. The examples I am going to give are just examples of the type of work we have funded under these programs. So if you have something you want to apply for that you don't hear me talking about or read about in the LOI, it may still be eligible. So first up is rental housing preservation. So Enterprise has long been focused on preserving affordable housing in rural communities and working with partners on building their capacity to develop and manage affordable housing. Funding here can be used by organizations to locate properties that are susceptible to being converted to market rate developments, or for staff time to perform due diligence on a potential acquisition or work with existing owners. Funds could also be used for pre-development costs such as appraisals, market studies, or comprehensive needs assessments. Also, an added resource that Enterprise can provide, with or without Section 4, that I wanted to mention is our contract with USDA to provide no-cost technical assistance to nonprofits who want to preserve 515 housing. So if anyone is interested in more information on that, please let me know. We can really work with nonprofits to help identify properties to target preservation efforts, how to best approach transactions, and navigate through the legal and regulatory paperwork, to name a few of the technical assistance items we can provide. Next up is Native home ownership. So this is a program area that's really gained a lot of momentum the last couple of years through our work on the Tribal Leaders Handbook on Home Ownership in partnership with the Center for Indian Country Development and our newly created program, the Native Home Ownership Learning Communities Cohort. So here we are very focused on building the capacity of organizations to enhance or implement a home ownership program in your Native community. This program area is all about increasing home ownership opportunities for Native Americans, and funds could be used for staff working on or creating a home ownership program, credit counseling program, or pre- and post-purchase counseling, just to name a few examples. This opportunity is only for organizations serving Native Americans, so tribes, TDAGs, and THAs. And I did want to mention also, we've had a few requests or checks on eligibility for Native CDFIs. We don't list them here, but if you have questions, if you're a Native CDFI and interested in this opportunity, please send me or the RFP mailbox a request, and we'll vet your eligibility. We have funded Native CDFIs in the past, and I know they play an integral role in this kind of work. So if you are interested in receiving Section 4 funding, you may be eligible, so just let us know if you have questions on that. So community and economic development, new name, new program name. So last year, this program was under the name Culture and Creativity, but we renamed it to Community and Economic Development to better align with the outcomes we see through creative placemaking, which includes economic development, housing, and culture and community development. So rest assured, the program components still include culture and creativity, but are also now more inclusive of economic development activities such as creating social enterprises, planning for community and economic development activities through state or regional initiatives such as the National Main Street Program or Opportunity Zones as examples. We're also interested in supporting organizations who are connecting arts, culture, and design to shed light on a local community issue. So think Arts Plus public health issues, for example. And we also recognize that rural communities can be struggling with economic opportunities, health concerns, and outmigration. And arts and culture is really a tool to economic development and building back up a rural community. People are a community's biggest asset, so asset mapping to determine what your community's strengths are is an example of an eligible expense under this program area. So the next program is a new one, and this is a sub-program of community and economic development. So building off of this work, we have a program that's in collaboration with the Orton Foundation's Heart and Soul program. So here we're looking to support organizations who are already participants in the Heart and Soul program. Like the program area I just described, the Heart and Soul program works to foster actionable planning by organizations, attract and engage others in a community, build an empowering culture for communities to take action, and advance discovery in land use and community planning fields. So here we would support things like technical assistance by a trained consultant to help organization identify what matters most in the community, support a short-term full-time staff person working on these efforts, or funding to support a community-based action plan. So again, you must be a participant of the Orton Foundation's Heart and Soul program to be eligible for this sub-program under community and economic development. So if you're not and you're interested in this type of work, you can still apply under community and economic development, but the sub-program is really for folks who are part of the Orton Foundation's Heart and Soul program. Economic mobility is another new program area. So this is a program area that was really developed by the National Initiatives at Enterprise, and now we're incorporating it into our rural work. This program is about advancing economic mobility for low-income families, particularly families of color and those geographically disconnected from opportunity, through a place and people partnership model centered on housing security. So here we're really looking to support cross-sector alignment activities and activities that connect housing and opportunities. So some examples of cross-collaboration would be partnerships between housing providers, educational institutions, anchor institutions, major employers, and workforce development partners. We'd also support housing-based service models that support economic mobility of residents. Health and housing. So this program area is for organizations working with the most vulnerable populations. That is low-income families, older adults, homeless and formerly homeless households, people with disabilities, persons with substance abuse issues, and veterans groups. So here is where all the permanent supportive housing work we see happening across the country would fit in. We're looking to support organizations working on creating permanent supportive housing, as well as resident services and programming. I think nearly every community we have traveled to in the past couple of years has highlighted the tremendous need to combat the substance abuse crisis that have really hit rural communities hard. So we've broadened the scope this year to now include supporting organizations who are developing projects and services and programming that serves the population with a history of chronic drug and alcohol abuse. We're also supporting groups that are working to improve health and service outcomes through housing and community-based solutions, so activities like health in the built environment, aging in place, and partnership with service providers. Health action plans is another example of a cost fitting under this work. The Health Action Plan is a process for affordable housing developers to integrate health considerations into the design, operations, and programming of their housing, and could also be coupled with technical assistance from Enterprise in support of these plans. Equitable climate resilience. So this is a new program name, but consists of the same priorities included last year, which are building and designing sustainable communities and resilience planning, disaster recovery, and rebuilding. So this program area was developed, or renamed, I should say, to more comprehensively support organizations that are making the connection between the design element of a project, sustainability, and resilient infrastructure. So building and designing sustainable communities. This program area includes really three main components: sustainability, design, and benchmarking. So sustainability, we're looking to support projects that support a holistic, portfolio-wide approach to environmental sustainability by organizations. On the design side, we're looking for projects that invest in the pre-development process that leverage design to improve the quality of affordable housing. In benchmarking, we're looking to assist organizations that are measuring, managing, and tracking utility expenditures. So under this bucket, typical expenses we see here are master planning, engineering reports, building needs assessments, architectural services, environmental reports, and staff time for these efforts. Also under equitable climate resilience is our resilience planning, disaster recovery, and rebuilding work. So here we're looking for organizations who are really proactively preparing to respond to the continued threat of natural disasters and ongoing recovery work. We could support staff time or the development of a comprehensive disaster plan. So by comprehensive disaster plan, we mean to include factors such as resident engagement strategies, business continuity protocols, building recovery, and preparation protocols. So, in your application, it lives under equitable climate resilience, and you can apply for building and designing sustainable communities or resilience planning, disaster recovery, and rebuilding under the equitable climate resilience umbrella. Last but certainly not least is a new program area we've developed, and that is organizational capacity building. We've developed this program because we know that in many rural communities, newer organizations, and often the only organization, has a lack of resources to strengthen their organization. We were also noticing in the last couple of years a good amount of proposals coming our way from newer organizations and wanted to create a program specifically to support those groups. So this program area is really, Section 4 in general is capacity building, but this particular program area, highlighting it and calling it out, is really for newer organizations. So organizations that have been in existence for 10 years or less, have an annual budget of $500,000 or less, and are the only housing or community development organization working within their community, and an organization that is working on increasing their overall organizational development capacities. So here we really want to help build up your operations and your staff. So we could support activities like improving back office functionality, accounting systems, asset management systems, and activities to increase your staff and board capacity. So those are the rural and Native American program areas, and now I'm going to kick it back to Kate to talk about the application process and some important information about applying.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Okay, so once you have created your account in SlideRoom, you're ready to answer the questions and eventually submit your application. So I'm just going to go over some of the things that you should be prepared to answer as part of your application. So this first section we're just calling organization information. So we want to know, obviously, your organization name, any other names or acronyms that your organization is known as. We want your federal tax ID number. And then we have a series of yes/no questions. We want to know if your organization is a 501c3 organization. If yes, we're going to ask you to upload a copy of your IRS letter of determination to verify that 501c3 status. We'll also be asking if your organization is a TDHE, a THA, or a federally recognized tribe. Some other basic information we want to know: your mailing address, city, state, and zip code. We're interested in the federal congressional district of your organization as well as your congressional representative. We want to know your primary and secondary contact information, email, phone numbers, and again, we're asking that you list authorized representatives from your organization. So please don't list any consultants that may be helping you with your application. And then these two questions here. We want to understand the socioeconomic needs of the cities and communities or the families and individuals in your organization's service area. And then the follow-up to that is we want to know what your organization views as its greatest capacity building need to successfully address those socioeconomic needs described above. The responses don't need to be tied to what you're requesting in your application. This could just be big picture, like what's your organization's biggest capacity building need? So for the narrative and the budget, we're going to be asking you to briefly describe your proposed program or activities that you're requesting funding support for. We'd like you to explain how it aligns with the selected enterprise program area that you're going to be picking, how it addresses your organizational capacity needs, and how it addresses the needs of low-income families, which again, for this program, were defined as 80% AMI or below. We want to understand what the impact of the proposed program is. So if you could include some measurable and quantifiable impact to your organization as well as to low-income families, that would be great. And we want to understand what your organizational experience is. So what your prior housing or community development experiences is. You can include unit counts or commercial square footage as relevant to the proposed program activities. We're going to be asking you to enter an amount that you're requesting from Enterprise for this specific program or project. So again, this is just the amount that you're requesting from us. It's not your overall program or project budget. We're also going to be asking if you've secured any other funding to support this project. This is just a yes or no question. You don't need to provide specific detail on any pending applications or funding received. As you'll notice here, some of the questions have character limits, so you'll want to be kind of thinking about, you know, what's really necessary to include in your application. Of course, if you have room and you feel that describing, you know, some of the other funding that you've secured and you have room, then feel free to include it. We also want to understand how you plan to use the grant funds. So this could be staff time, consultant expenses, other direct costs, let's just say like meeting expenses or travel. Appendix B of the LOI covers eligible activities and allowable costs. One thing to caution everyone about are a few of the most common types of ineligible costs that we see, and those include fundraising, advocacy, lobbying, and stipends. But again, if you look at Appendix B of the LOI, there's a much larger list that kind of goes over the most common types of expenses that we fund, along with ones to avoid. We're also going to be asking you to enter the city where your proposed activities will take place. Again, just a reminder that for this program, all the activities need to be performed in a rural area. We're going to be asking if these activities are taking place in an area of persistent poverty. So if the answer is yes, you're going to be entering the county where those activities are taking place. And then we want to know the state or territory and the zip code where the proposed activities are going to be taking place. So some threshold requirements here that all applicants need to meet in order to have their application reviewed by Enterprise staff. The first is that all of your activities must address the needs of low-income households, again, which is defined as 80% AMI or lower for the Section 4 program. Low-income households is defined as a single person who may be elderly, displaced, disabled, near elderly, or any other single person, a group of persons residing together, or any persons occupying a housing unit. The second one is that you must be eligible to apply for this funding opportunity. So again, you can look at Appendix A of the LOI. Again, this funding opportunity is open to CDCs, CHODOs, or organizations that are similar in scope or function to a traditional CDC, like 501c3 federally recognized tribes, TDHEs, THAs. Again, if you have any questions about your eligibility, feel free to reach out to us at the RFP mailbox or get in touch with Sarah. So your applications are going to be scored against 3 criteria. You have the opportunity to receive up to 27 points. And in order to be invited to the full proposal stage, you have to receive a minimum of 20 points. So the first criteria is how well your proposed program aligns with a selected enterprise program area. So you can get up to 10 points for this, and you can see here the 10 points are broken down into 3 bullets. The first is that you can get 3 points if your proposed program describes the specific activities that the grant will support and that you have a really sound approach. A second is that your program aligns with your selected program priority as described in the LOI. And lastly, you can get 3 points for clearly identifying the capacity building needs of your organization and how the grant's going to help you address those needs. Criteria 2 is impact. This is worth up to 10 points. Again, we're looking for you to clearly describe how your application presents significant impact to your organization, as well as to the needs of families with low income and the communities that you serve. The third is the capacity and experience of your organization. So again, describing your prior housing or community development experience as relevant to the proposed activities that you're including in your application. So Sarah mentioned earlier that this year there's a bonus question for applicants that are proposing to perform activities in an area of persistent poverty. So you can get up to 2 points for that. So I mentioned earlier that the Rural and Native American LOI and access to create slide room and submit your application are available on our website. You'll want to look at Appendix C in the LOI to get information on how to create a slide room account. And then once you're logged into slide room, you can see kind of big picture, all the questions that we went over that you'll be asked to answer. The great thing about slide room is that it automatically saves your work as you go. So you can log in and out as many times as you need to complete the application. Slide room also has some great features to help you keep on track with the deadline. So 72 hours before the deadline, you're going to receive an email reminder if you have not yet submitted your application. And then within a week of the deadline, there'll be a countdown timer within slide room that'll kind of help you show exactly how much time is left for you to submit your application. We don't want anybody to miss the deadline or miss including some critical information, so please carefully review your application before you submit it, because once an application is submitted, we won't be able to make any changes to that application. So if you have by chance omitted any question, if it's a required question, you'll get a red notification at the top of the screen, and it'll take you back to those questions in the application, so you have the opportunity to complete those. Once you submit your application, you're going to get a confirmation ID number, and it'll include the date of the submission and then the LOI program that you've applied under. You'll also get a confirmation email. You'll want to keep this for your records just in case of any technical complications. And then you can also print your application directly from slide room. So all of the applications are due on July 15th at 11:59 p.m. We don't have any control over when the system actually shuts off, so this is part of the functionality of slide room. At 11:59 p.m., slide room will shut down for this funding opportunity, so it's really important to submit your application as early as possible. And again, just reminding you to carefully review your application because we won't be able to make any changes after it's been submitted. We're also not accepting any, again, late or hard copy applications, so everything has to be submitted within slide room. So some important dates. We just talked about the LOI deadline. It's July 15th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. If you're invited to submit a full proposal, you'll get an email invitation on August 8th. And then you have until September 9th to submit your full proposal. We have a lot of online resources that we encourage you to take advantage of. We're going to have a frequently asked questions document available on our website, and we'll be updating that weekly. So it'll just include some general questions, information. We'll include the rural link again in case you aren't sure if your activities are taking place in a rural area, some submission information, and so on. We have some tutorials that kind of go into more detail about eligibility requirements. We have a grants guide that walks you through the application phase all the way through the close of a grant should you get one. So it covers the grant agreement setup process, disbursement request process, and closeout of the grant. If you're interested in our Green Communities criteria, there's a link there for you to check that out. We have a whole host of other Section 4 tutorials, and then we have some information if your organization is interested in advancing any racial equity efforts within your organization. We have a racial equity webinar, a worksheet, and a toolkit that some people may find helpful. So again, just some really important reminders. You can only submit one proposal under both of the open Section 4 LOIs. So again, the national LOI is open and the rural and Native American LOI is open. If you have an application that you think would be a good fit for both, you're going to have to select which funding opportunity is the best fit. So again, you can only submit one proposal. You're also going to be selecting only one program area. And we're only going to be considering LOIs from applicants that have met both of those threshold requirements, submitted an application through SlideRoom, and submitted their application on time. And again, we won't be able to make any changes to applications that have been submitted. Any questions that are specific to the rural and Native American program areas should be sent to Sarah. Her email address is listed here. If you have any general questions about the LOI, you can submit them to rfp@enterprisecommunity.org. And we've got quite a few people checking the mailbox, so response time is pretty quick. So please don't wait till the last minute to ask important questions. If you happen to run into any technical issues within SlideRoom, they have a fantastic support system. They're available from Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. through 9 p.m. Central, and their email address is listed here. And as I mentioned, we'll be posting an FAQ on our website that's going to be updated weekly. Okay, so with that, if you have any questions, you can send them to the Q&A chat box at the bottom right of the screen. Sarah and I will be going through and answering those. So I'll just start reading some questions aloud that we've gotten. So here, the first one is related to persistent poverty areas. Are those areas defined by enterprise or by a federal agency?
So we are using a federal agency's definition. So same as the definition of rural, right? There are many, many definitions of what rural means, same as areas of persistent poverty. So here we're using the CDFI fund definition, which is also consistent with some Congressional Research Service definitions. So definitely it's not our definition.
Okay. The next one, will the PowerPoint be shared with participants for future reference? And the answer is yes. We'll be sharing this PowerPoint deck along with a recording of the webinar, and they'll also be posted on our website. Is there TA available for the Organizational Stability Program area?
Yes, absolutely. There is TA available really for all of the program areas, but recognizing that newer organizations might need a little extra technical assistance under that program area, we'll definitely provide that. But again, it's really, TA is available for all of these program areas.
Okay. Can you please provide an example of what a CDC-like organization looks like? So in Appendix A of the LOI, we have a set of 8 criteria that HUD developed that they feel that organizations that would qualify as a CDC should meet. But below those 8 criteria, there are also, I think, 3 or 4. And one of those states that organizations that function or are similar in scope to organizations that meet those 8 criteria above could also qualify. It's kind of hard to give you a real example, but any organization that is CDC-like has to go through a vetting process by enterprise staff. So what we're really looking for, we're going to be collecting your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, a 501c3 IRS letter of determination letter if you have one, and we're going to be looking to see, what is your primary purpose? What geographic area are you working in? What is your board structure like? And we're going to be comparing that information to the 8 characteristics that make up a CDC. So if your organization happens to meet those 8 CDC characteristics, we would consider your organization eligible to apply. But we really have to do this on a case-by-case basis since the structure of organizations really can be quite different. But if you think that your organization is CDC-like, we would be happy to review your organizational documents to help make that eligibility determination. So if you want to email rfp@enterprisecommunity.org, we'd be happy to get that started for you. Let's see. So when can we expect to receive a copy of the presentation? So we'll have to do a little bit of editing to the webinar today, but we should be able to get that out to everybody by tomorrow. And we'll have to coordinate internally to get the information posted on our website. So everything should be up by early next week on the website. I am not seeing any other questions, so we'll give you guys, we have a few minutes left. Again, if you have a specific question, feel free to type it into the Q&A chat box on the bottom right hand of the screen.
Kate, I see one question.
Okay.
And it says, what was the impetus for the Heart and Soul program with the Orton Foundation? Sounds great. So Enterprise has been working on building their community and economic development program and found that the Orton Foundation is a great partner working in this space. So we're really just using Section 4 to supplement an already well-established program, and it's really just about collaborating in the space of community and economic development. So that's the impetus behind the collaboration with Orton Foundation.
Great. All right, I have another question in the chat box. Does the National Section 4 LOI have the same program areas and general criteria process? So the National Section 4 LOI has mostly different program areas. There are 5 program areas: housing stability, health and housing, equitable climate resilience, economic mobility, and I'm forgetting one, organizational sustainability. So that one is the same as, or the same program name as the Rural and Native American Initiative LOI program areas, but they are a little bit different. But the eligibility criteria, the submission process, scoring criteria are the same with the exception of the bonus points for persistent poverty areas. There is no bonus point in the national LOI. Does developing child care with housing count as an economic mobility activity?
Yes. Yep, it could.
Okay.
Absolutely apply there.
Okay, great. Let's see. can you explain more about the ineligibility of intermediary organizations? They are not eligible for funding even if they're working with a CDC. I think this is in relation to the membership group shift. So what we found with membership organizations that received support in the past is that their proposed activities weren't building the capacity of their organization, but instead were building the capacity of their members. And one of the criteria of the Section 4 program is to build the capacity, the direct capacity of those CDC and CHODO applicants. So the concern there also is that, you know, again, like any trainings or technical assistance that perhaps a membership organization was providing to their members was really just building the capacity of their members. So even if the members were CDCs, you know, which is still fantastic, the intent of the Section 4 program is to build the capacity, the direct capacity of CDCs and CHODOs. But again, we understand that, you know, not all membership organizations are structured the same. In the FAQ that we're going to be posting, I'll include what enterprise defines or considers a membership organization. But if you feel that your organization is eligible, even if you are a membership organization, you know, we'd be happy to collect your organizational documents to make that eligibility determination. Well, we have 3 minutes left, so if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box. I am not seeing any other questions.
Yep, so I think we can wrap it up, and I thank everybody for their time today. If you do have questions, as Kate said, you can email the RFP mailbox, you can contact me, and the PowerPoint and the recording will be shared with everybody shortly. So good luck with your applications, and again, please do not hesitate to reach out with questions. Thanks, everybody.